watcher. So this is an interesting challenge. Here we have the challenge of taking a Fender FMT telecaster and routing it for a Strat-style tremolo. Now I know some people will be up in arms about the very idea of that, but you know, it's what the customer prefers, and that's what the customer is going to get. Now, my customer in this case is somebody who knows exactly what I can and can't do, and haven't done, and I'm very clear with him that I've not done this on a guitar like this before. However, I have routed for tremolos on other things, so I'm going to do that on here. So he asked if I would make a video of doing it, and I've got some of the way into it, so I'm sort of backtracking a little bit, but I thought I'd do that and kind of just talk through what I had to keep in mind whilst doing this. I think I probably better turn that off. So if you're gonna put a tremolo into something, you've got to I suppose a primary consideration is the thickness of the body, okay? Because this is quite a thin body Telecaster, and it's got a cutaway and whatever. At its thickest, I've forgotten what it is now, I've written it down somewhere. At its thickest, it's 42 up here, and its thinnest down at the edge with the binding, it's 35. So it's 7 mils drop. So even at 42 here, up here, it's still not as still not as thick as a full body Telecaster. However, because the routing is going to go into the center section, so we're really dealing with only the 42mm thickness. So we take the 42 as our start point, and then what I've done is I've started out with doing some careful measurements. Now what I've done in this case, I'm pretty confident that the tremolo thingy, actually I'm not entirely confident. So let me go back. What I've done is I've drawn a little map to show what I'm doing with my measurements. So we've got, as I say, 42 full width, 35 from the the 35 is the next layer down, so that's a drop of 7 there. I've drawn into it the humbucker routes plus the little humbucker screw wells that are on either side, and then I've kind of gone and said, right, this is what my tremolo my tremolo routes are going to have to be, and I've basically the one that's important really is you don't want to come through and end up with fresh air behind here. So obviously the spring routing on the back is going to need to go in a certain amount, because you've got to get the spring, the claw in there and at the right angle and so on. So it has to go in the correct amount, but we don't want it to come through so far that it comes through here. So having measured these through, measured the depth of these, what I've done is I've calculated the maximum depth of route here to leave probably what looks like 3mm of timber at the bottom of these pickup cavities. Now it is purely cosmetic, not least because these are hanging on rings anyway, so you won't really see into there, but it doesn't feel right if you come through. I did that on this Stratocaster down here because I overcut the, what did I overcut? I overcut the pickup routes. That was my mistake, and they're covered with a pickguard anyway, so again it's not a major problem, but it's not something I'd want to do on a production model particularly. So you have to be sure about your thicknesses, your dimensions, factor in the depth of these routes here. The wells in the corners are quite a bit deeper, and the idea is that this routing at the back here should fall between and not cut into those, but we can't be absolutely sure. So this is showing about 56mm. If I go into there, that is barely 56 mils. So the chances are be highly likely that our putting a a tremolo into a guitar like this with a relatively narrow body compared to the 44 millimeters of the sort of standard thickness, full thickness, and the fact that they've routed these pickup cavities with wells, very deep wells in the side to accommodate the humbucker screws, the chances are that this routing here is going to cut just inside those, so you may actually see through. Hopefully we're still leaving 2 or 3 millimeters of timber here, so it won't look like a great big open space, but we have to expect that's likely to happen. When we cut through here, it's going to just clip the edges of those wells. No way around it. We can't not do it. We can't put a tremolo in of this type if we don't do that. We could try and make it narrower in the body here just to avoid it, but you run the risk of, when your tremolo is inside the thing, you run the risk of the springs actually, well, no, you've got a bit of leeway actually. We could have narrowed that, but we'd have to make a special new template for it, and it's a bit... Anyhow, so there's my measurements for my all-important route depths. So the first thing you've got to do on a guitar like this is you've got to find the midpoint, and it's not actually entirely straightforward, because these things, you can't guarantee that the center of these things is exactly the center. Now with a tremolo, you can afford a bit of wonkiness with the the factory made pickup cavities, and usually they're going to be spot on, right? But you know, occasionally there's a bit of leeway. So what I've done is I've gone from the center line down the middle of the nut, measured full nut down the middle of this, and also down the middle of those dots, to checking that they're accurate. And then I've taken a line off down here, and I've retained most of it just as a guide point. So we've got a center point line, and then what I've done is I've actually, rather than trust any template, because the templates tend to come with, they go, oh look, here's a standard spacing for the screw holes on a, whatchamacallit, on a 6-hole trim. I'm going to sneeze. But, excuse me. But you don't always want to, you can't really always take that standard thing for take their word for it. What I prefer to do is take the actual bridge I've got and work out the distance. So okay, let's come backwards. What you've got to do is you've got to place your nominal scale length. So you get a ruler and you measure. I'm going back a couple of steps, so it's going to look a bit silly really, but anyway. So what I would do typically is I would stick down a piece of tape like this, and then I would get my ruler, and I want to put my 6/48 millimeter. Now if you're not sure what the scale length is, you can check it by measuring it down the center, down to the front edge of the nut to the middle of the 12th fret, and this is coming up as 320. It's actually coming up as 323.5, but there is a tiny bit missing off the top of my stupid tool zone thing, so I know that's a 324. Right, so that also then tells me that, providing that's touching there, a 6/48 will be my Strat scale length, or my tele scale length. I'll come out now to, so I can use a dropped square edge like this, and then I can mark my point with a pen, and I can say there, in fact I already marked it, but I can say there is my nominal 6/48 scale length. Now the point about that is, when you come to decide where you're going to anchor this bridge, all right, you've got your center point, and you're basically, you want to consider your start point of your 6/48 needs to align ideally with the front or the top E saddle. So I've put the top E saddle out of the way of any screws and just kind of lined it up in its ideal position, so it doesn't clip. It can sit down properly without clipping the tremolo screw that's going to be in there. So I get that into its position, and then I can basically take this off. I'm not going to do it now because it's a pain. Take this off and I lay this down, and I find where the saddle apex here lines up with my 6/48 scale length, right? And then from that I can see, I could even do it like this, I can then see where my screw hole needs to be, and I can mark my screw holes accordingly. Now what I've done on this is I've taken it down exactly down the center line of the guitar, right? And it is in keeping with the original string spacings, which tells us that the positioning should be spot on. If you're not sure about that, it may make more sense to route first with an approximation of the, well, the first thing you can route by knowing exactly where you're going to do your route, and then you can drop this in with a string on. And if you want to be absolutely dead certain, then I would suggest you kind of do that and you move it from side to side within its slot and then get the exact start point for the screws. I've made these holes, marked these holes already, because I'm pretty confident this is going to sit as exactly the same spacing as it was before, because the centre line was on where this original bridge was mounted is pretty accurate. What isn't accurate, interestingly enough, is this. That's miles off the centre line, the Strat button. So don't trust that as a start point for your centre line. Take it from either the fixed hardware combination of the pickup routes, and better yet, the centre line of the neck is your best bet, because ultimately when you've made that centre line, you need your tremolo. Let's say, for example, the neck is in at a funny angle, you need your tremolo over there. You don't need it stuck there pulling the strings back into a line that doesn't correspond with the neck. You need the bridge to be sympathetic to the neck. The neck is the fixed unit here, as you can see in this particular set neck. Going to stop for some late breakfast, but I'll be back onto this case in a minute. Okay, so when you've worked out where your screws, 6 screws will go, I made some little holes, little marks, and I have what's the word? Drilled out the pilot holes, measured them carefully. Something I'm just going to do a second. I'm just going to extend this centre line for a minute. Now, what I've done is I've made me a template, 2 templates, especially for this task, because a standard template, oh god, stay still, a standard template won't do because it's too big. So the one that you might use for doing your Strat routing, okay, that's pretty good on the centre. I'm going to do something else with this, which might look a bit odd, but I'm going to tear this back, just if I can get my fingernails to grip it. Oh, come on, thank you. I'm going to tear this back, hopefully as thin as possible, because I need to use this area here for fixing the template 2. Now the thing about this guitar top is that it's a nice, poly finish, but so it'll stick something to it quite well, but it's slightly curved, obviously, and so there isn't a lot of room. Now what I've done is I've made up some smaller templates, and the reason I made them smaller, the important part is I can't remember which, okay, it's that way around. So I have to be able to get it on the centre line but avoid hitting the knobs down here. Okay, so there's my kind of centre line there. Excuse me. Now I've just taken off the marking that I needed to know. So this is the problem, having to take things off and on. Let me see if I can just remark something up. So I know where my start point is. What I don't instantly know is where my block is going to sit on this, because I have to know where to place this template. So the template has to go down with the longer side that way to accommodate the arm, but I have to have it comfortably within this space. Now ideally it would be probably close to the front edge, as nearer the front edge than the back edge, because we want it to have room to move backwards. If you put it right back to the back, you can't move, so you need it nearer the front of you need your hole to be nearer the front of the block. So the first thing you really have to do is figure out where the block is in relation to anything here. So perhaps a way of doing it is to take this off. So we'll take the saddle point off one more time. They're all spare sitting in the box, but we can do it probably this, no, we can't really do it that way, right, can we? What I'm trying to do is to gauge the width, first of all, of the block. Now here are the 6 holes, which doesn't tell us a lot about the positioning, but it tells us about the width of the block. So if I just raise it up for a second and eyeball this, I can see that my block starts about there, probably even there if I'm honest. So my block starts there. I can tell how thick it is. It's 13.3, so I can mark 13.3, and that's the thickness of the block. Now I've got to draw some lines, and I'll do them freehand. These have got to be 90 degrees to the centre line ideally, but as I say, I'm going to eyeball this for the time being, and I'm just going to draw that down there like that and compress the damn paper, which isn't very clever, and I'm going to draw that down that side like that. So that's the width of my block, so that's quite useful. That's what I really need to know. And then I guess what I'm looking to do is place my template in a position that will fit, that will tally with the right position for the block. So just draw my centre line again. There's my centre line of the template. The larger bit goes that way, and I can now place this dead on the line, or as close to the line as I can get. Now if I want to, just as a beginning point, I can draw around that while I've got the paper there, and just have a sort of look at what it gives us. Okay, so we see that there's our start point. What we can do is double check. So from the front of our block to the centre of a hole is going to be, if I can do it, I haven't got the exact, very clever way of doing it. I think it's about 16. Let's just double check it in the light. Yep, I would say it's dead on 16. Centre of the hole to the front of the block is 16, right? That's almost bang on. In fact, the block's a little bit further back than I've drawn it, but that 16 gives us plenty of room front and back, possibly a bit more room at the front than we need, but I'd rather have a little bit either side than to push it up against either way. If I go back to this and I move this to where that's showing as my rotation point, I can test it. I can set it up pretty much like that, so 2 mils back, right, and I can rotate it and see how it works and how far I can go, and that's more than enough for my tremolo up movement, my float. It wouldn't be quite as complex as this if you were doing it from scratch with the thing you were making yourself. It would be a different process, but not quite as fiddly. So I'm pretty happy where the position of that sits. Now the issue I've got to do is I've got to mark this in such a way that I can take away most of the paper here. Now, one of the things, by the way, if you make templates, it's always handy to do is get your square edge, a fine pen, which is somewhere else now. Okay, the top's off, the pen's gone. What have I done with it? My drill has conked out as well. That's a real shame. It's finally died. Right, I've lost. How can I lose a pen? Do I really have? No, there it is, under the ruler. Right, what's useful to do when you get a chance is to use a square edge in some way or other. Whether it's this way or this way. Use a square edge to draw on, extend your centre line down the inside of your template, because that straight line down there is pretty important. It's quite difficult to do because you usually not get your square edge in there very tidily, but if you can sort of somehow wangle it and get right in the centre of your big fat line, you have to run off the back edge of this, so it becomes a little bit difficult. You want to square it to the edge as best you can and then drop the line down. That gives you a line in the middle there to work off, to adjust it, adapt to here. So I'm going to realign there, and what I'll do is I'm going to draw just a marker point here and here, and I can also trust the centerline that I've got marked here. And the reason I'm doing that is because in order to make this thing stick, now I've worked out where it has to be, I really need to remove the rest of this tape. Now you see that this guitar already has a kind of recess here to hold the strings. I'm not quite sure why it has that little recess. Why does it have that recess? Because it had this... Oh, it's messing me around now. But that's ruined that. Brilliant. It's made a mess of that. I've got one position still there. I dragged the tape instead of cutting it, tearing it. Anyway, yeah. So this, you can see this thing had one of these recessed things on this side. I'm not quite sure why. Does that permit it to have a different kind of tunematic bridge or something? It came with an original flat Strat-style bridge, but anyway. But so we're going to end up routing over most of it, routing through most of this, but we're going to leave a little cutout at the front because it doesn't quite tally up. I don't, even though the temptation is to make this match that, it won't quite do it. That line I've drawn on there previously is going to disappear. So basically, if we're getting almost lined up, I have to trust this edge now, not this. Let's do the edges here. If we get this lined up, we'll end up with a little lip forward of that, but that's just par for this course, I'm afraid. A right angle like this, a T-square, no, right angle it is, isn't it? Is really critical for marking center points and stuff. Okay, so what I would be looking to do, I'll go from the inside edge to the center line. That's going to be my new cutout right there. So, and we know that from the front, that gives us the right distance to the screws. Okay, so this is the tricky bit. We've cleared up as much space as possible here to give us grip, and I want to clear away anything that is superfluous and is going to just get in the way of stickiness. Also, if you're going to use double-sided tape, you might as well make sure this is as sticky as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is load up this thing here with tape. Now this is pretty expensive. This is $7.95 a roll, and there isn't an awful lot on it, but it is one of the best ones for template holding that I've come across. And the reason one of the reasons it's so good and probably so expensive is that at the same time as providing a good grip, it also, the stuff that it grips with, the glue, comes off in a sheet afterwards. So you don't have to spend so long trying desperately to clean it up. So what I'm trying to do here is cover as much as possible of this template so that we have as much grip as is possible. I'm just going to use this as a sort of cutting board because it's a temporary template anyway, so I'm not too worried about mistreating it. This is the template for the back piece, the tremolo spring routing. Okay, so there's our glue. That's the back one. Again, cut down in size. Not so important on the back. We probably could get away with using one of the other ones. It's this front one that's tricky. So now having got our glue, our double-sided tape on, I should say, we can peel it off and we're ready to place the template. The template's good. I made it this morning. I actually had extended this template a little bit on the originals, and then I realised I didn't need it as big as I'd made it, so I re-shrunk it a little bit with some. I used some JB Weld, they call it. Right, so here we go. This is the bit where we're going to stick this thing down. Now we go. I'm taking the left edge as my guide for positioning, and we're not far off the front of that little cutout when I look at it now. I'm lining up the front and back edge like that a bit off the centre line now. Push it a little tiny bit. Put it back there. That is about it. Okay. Woohoo! We have our template down. Now that, if we look at our thing there, the thing about this that's always kind of odd is when you do the through part, it's hard to describe. This bit here is ultimately a hole all the way through, and on many guitars what you get to see is, what do you get to see? You get to see, that's what you get. You get, on many guitars you get a hole that comes up to here, stops there like that. Okay, so you have to think about how that happens. Okay, so what we do is we cut down first like this, right, and that makes a straight line, or well, not all the way through. We go down to a certain point, and actually you've got quite a lot of leeway, but I'm going to go to 28, which is just past the minimum depth of this, right? So even if I just did the 18 slab cut, we would get a hole, right? But what we really want is, we want this wider cut here, because there's a wider, this bit on the back is wider than the front bit. We have to take advantage of that wideness, because the idea is it's wider at the bottom to allow the tremolo to push outwards further than it needs to go at the top, because the movement of the block is bigger at the bottom, obviously. So that's why the bottom bit is wider always than the top bit. But the question is, how does it sit? Well, it sits, the wide part sits further back, so that if I do this with a coloured thing, the idea is that when we, I'm just going to fake this a minute, when we end up with our tremolo sitting up at a kicked up angle, what happens is the bridge can sort of go, the block can go like that, and it has to have the bigger swing at the bottom part here, which is why this bit here is wider than, well, this hole here, there, is wider, that hole there is wider than this hole here, because the movement is greater here. And what happens is, you often find that on guitars, when you look at them, this hole is drilled all the way down to just short of the top of the body. So if that was, we say that's 42, right? We might go down to, let's call it drill all the way down here to 38. Okay, let's add another figure on here, 38. So I know that this section is going to be 18 mils deep, and I know I want this section to be 38 millimeters deep, which means that it will leave, if I've got it right, it will leave a little lip of wood right here, so that it won't go through, and you obviously won't enlarge this hole anymore, but when you look at it from the other side, you'll see a hole and then a little lip representing the underside of this. Now, the reason why it's good to have that extra hole as big as possible is because if you didn't put in that extra bit at all, then this thing might not be able to swing freely. So it needs to, truthfully, it could probably only have to cut all the way to there. You'd get away with it, because it's not going to impede, you're not going to need that extra room. I don't know why on factory made guitars it goes all the way back down to within 3 or 4 millimeters of this. It's just tradition. I don't know. Doesn't appear to be a reason. Anyhow, so here we have the template quite nicely. You know, you can move it if you're not careful, but we have to look at this and we go, what's our downward here? On here we're going to go 28 mils downwards. Now that obviously is 28 plus the template, so we have to be aware of what the template is, which is now hiding under the ruler again. And I think template's 7.7. Okay, so it's a 28 mils, or if we take it as 8, it's 36, including the template. Right, 28 from the top of the body of the guitar, 36 from the template, if we feel like we want to do it all the way down. Truth is, we can get a certain amount down and we can remove the template and do the rest with yeah, actually, you know what, we could, no, I have a suspicion, what I haven't checked is this. Let me get the router itself a minute. Here's a thing we need to check. So we have to be able to get right to this corner here, and we can get right to there and we can get right to there. There's absolutely no problem, right? So that's fine. What we would need to do is, if we took this off, we could still get there. My concern is this will keep it, there's a slight tip off here, and I think this keeps it flatter. So the deeper we can go, and if we can get all of the routing done using this template, we have at least a somewhat flatter start point. It won't be perfect, it can rock a tiny little bit as we push over here, but we'll get a better run out of it. Right, so we're going to take this outside. I don't know how long this battery is going to last, but you can come with me on battery power. You're going to get wind blown at you, and so on and so on. I'm just going to pull up a towel when I go. I think I'm just going to place the guitar on a towel. It's a small routing, so I don't think it's going to require bolting it down or anything major, so just hang fire. Stay there. I'm going to go forwards this way. Yeah, that's pretty stable actually. We'll need our guide, our depth gauge. We'll need to change router bits at some point, and you're going to get sprayed with bits probably. Now I'm just wondering if I should start with this butted up against there in case it does want to move at all, and it will only move in this direction. That's my theory. Right, so I'll plug this in. I'll clear that, get that out of the way. Make sure this is not tilted, equally balanced. Okay, so here's the fun. Give you a chance. Forget the noise, this is going to destroy your ears. So, let's double check. Oh, that's not good. Velcro, are you still running? Yeah, you are. Bless you. Right, stay there. Keep out of the way of my wires. Right, just double check this. Center point is good, is good. Okay, we're going to make the first incision. So I'm going to leave it loose for a minute. Let's see how far down we can go in one go. So we're going to have to do some manually first. Ready? Wish I had a head mounted thing. I wonder if that's going to be a better view. Probably not. When all's said and done. Right, let's get it lined up. Just a quick thought, we've got some things on the back we've got to take out, the ferrules. I'm not sure I'm going to get those out. So let's do this before it rains. taken it down to the first. Oh, I've got some to clip off there. I haven't quite cleaned it off. Hold on. It's going to rain. Little tip: don't be tempted to lift out the router until. Alright, I've got to come back up again. Don't lift it out until it's stopped, because you'll invariably clip the side. Okay, so that was just tidying up a little lip that I'd gone bypassed on my first things. Now there's an interesting, I think is that a hole for the bridge earth? I think it is. You can just see we clipped the hole for the bridge earth. Right, now I can either, at this point, remove the template and keep on going down, or we can, it's like a split with rain, but it's only a passing shower. We can switch to the next router bit in series. I don't like going, get the right one, don't like going ultimately too long, but for the purpose of this, it's probably better, as I said, that we work on the flat template surface on this side than to take it off and roll downhill with the template, with the router. Okay, so I need to stand by with this. We're going 36 depth with the 36 with the template on. Okay, we're at 17, so we're kind of halfway down. Never a simple procedure, and I beg my neighbours' forgiveness. I'm going to stand on this side now, blow the dust off there, and I go at it from this angle. Right, so we're down at the depth now that whatever I do, I've got the bearing contacted. The first part of this is difficult because you have to cut away without touching the edges, because you're free-handing until you get to a depth where the bearing just contacts the edge of the template. Otherwise, if you don't do that freehand and you don't carefully control it, that will roll off into the template and take a chunk out of it and out of the guitar as well. So now I'm going to drop down. I'm safe in that it's always within template range of the bearing now, so that the bearing's never not going to be connected. So I'm going to go to the extent of this bit and then change to another one. There, check the depth, change the blade, change the bit. Okay, 26.6, we're 10 short, change to the next bit. Next bit please. And I like to do it in careful increments rather than jump down to a taller bit in one go. What you don't want to do is go so far forward in the bit size that you end up having to freehand again until you reach the edge of the template. So it's better to go in steps. Okay, so ready to go. Lift it up and start. At the extent of that bearing anyway, so bearing bit is what I meant. So we'll get rid of that, change it for the next longest one, and we'll measure at the same time. Which one? Should we go blue? Let's go blue. Let's go blue. happiness would be a new set of bearings, bits, not bearings, bearings are alright. Right, check the depth. What happens is we're at 31 now, we've got 5 mils to go in the target depth that I set, and we can just drop down here. So I'll do a few mils freehand. Do is we'll measure the depth. This router has a slightly annoying habit. We're 34, we're as close as we need to be nearly. This has a habit of, when it bites more than a millimetre or two of wood, it will pull the blade, it will pull this out, it unwinds the thing. You see I can actually pull that out. I can't seem to lock it down hard enough so that it stays where I really put it. So I have to be prepared that if it bites more than a mil or two, it will pull down. So if I just lay that on the surface here and start, actually what I want to do is start it up, drop it onto the surface. Noticing that it was finding more to dig into each time it went round, even though I wasn't adjusting it. And lo and behold, we're at the depth we wanted. So, stage 1 complete. Oh, you know, I missed a critical part of this, which I'll do now. This is a part that we really need. It's not, in the end, it's not actually the end of the world that I didn't do it first. We needed to put a guide, somebody will have spotted that, we needed to put a guide hole in here to line up the template on the other side. I've actually already sort of physically done it, lined it up, measured and lined it up. But the way you do it is you can, actually ideally we put this on the, let's see if we can do it. Come with me, come with me. We put this on to the bench drill, pillar drill. Just bear with me a second. Got a 10mm drill bit, and we're going to make a pilot hole, which tells us, it's not a pilot hole, it's a registration hole, that's what it should be technically, and it needs to fit the, fits the radius of the corner. So what we do is we get all this crap out of the way, we lower this to approximately something like the right depth, we remove this one, keep on undoing until we get this lined up, and we're just going to use this to drill through in a particular corner, and the corner that we drill through here becomes the registration point for the template location on the other side. Usually people do it first before they do the routing, but as you can see, if you forget, you can do it next. It's the standard way of knowing how to locate the back template. So just to make this protect the underside of this guitar for a second, I'm going to put that down there, and I'm going to just let's just double check that I can. Where am I going? Top point, top point, top point. Right, top right hand corner is my marker point. Sorry. I got to. That's the trouble with doing this. Too many wires dangling places. So basically, I have to get this into this top corner. Let me just double check that is top corner. Top corner there, bottom corner there extends backwards. So that's the same reference point, same reference point. Sticky out bit, sticky out bit. Right, top right hand corner. It's always worth double checking. Right, so we're just going to lift that along to there. Now the trick now will just be to down this and line this up in a nice sort of position that's on target. Okay. We want it to be close up, snug, but without pushing on it. Okay, so there we have it. Now I should really, ideally, I would want to put that on a piece of timber for the cut through, but I didn't really, I was protecting the finishing mostly, so I've got it to there, and if I feel like it I could shoot that through by hand, or we could stick it on a piece of ply. Let's use a piece of ply I'm going to use as a template for something else, but I don't mind a slight dent in it, and that's nice new. You didn't see me kick that over, did you? Right, hang up the guitar safely, push out of the way, remove. Right, okay, you wires out of the way, you square on there. You will need to probably come down a fraction now, possibly not, but maybe, just to be on the safe side. Locked off, guitar back, gently through amongst the rigmarole of the wires, in between there, up to there. Now we're going to cut through on this one, so I'm just going to start off by locating the drill. There you are, that's nice. Start going. Just check that, make sure it's all through. Doesn't look like it's dented the ply, so it may only just be through. Take a quick look. Break some of this off, please. I don't need all of that. Okay, we are through. We are through. Now I just want to make it to the right size so I can use it as a reference. Actually, what I need to do really, let's just move you. Sorry, we're a little bit out of space on here at the moment. Put you down there. Just going to remove some things so I can work with this a bit better. Just need a centre line, ideally, but I don't need all of this stuff kicking around. I need a centre line, mainly off to the edge, either side, not in the middle. So I'll be with you in a second when I've torn this free. Actually, this is taking a bit longer because I'm obviously not going to use a blade to cut this stuff away. So I'm having to pull it up by hand, and it doesn't want to comply. Masking tape. I want to keep the centre line on the other side as well. So I've got my start point. And what I'll do is I'll show you just now. Right, let's just tear this off out of the way as well. Centre point's still there. Now we've got these. Oh, sorry. We've got these which I haven't really been able to get out yet, but I'm not going to worry about those for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just check out the position of my template. Now I ought to draw lines on these as well. Oh, I know we'll get rid of these, but I've still got to pull them out. So let me just get my registration hole to the correct size. Just gently kind of cut away the last little bits of wood where it didn't go through. Okay, there's a point. Now that's obviously, that is going to be taken away by the what's it now. Interestingly, this is telling me, this vertical center point is telling me my center line off the back here is slightly wrong. I'm going to trust the pilot hole as the reference point on this, in this matter. So I need only, let me just mark up where I need. I can get rid of, I don't really trust this line at all, but I'm going to use it still as a vague reference point, so I know that I've got it in line at least, even if it's not actually the same, exactly the same position as before. So I still will retain that guide center line. So what we're going to end up doing is dropping this thing in here, and we need that to run what we sort of call perpendicular. So I will require center points. I trust the center point of this template because I do. What I don't trust is the center point I drew on that guitar, and the way I drew it was by tracing the center line from the front round the back, but that can be subject to inaccuracy because you're going over an edge. You haven't got an exact flat edge to work as you trace it round with your square edge, your 90-degree edge. So it's the least reliable part. Now our pilot hole lines up with the upper inside edge of this extended bit of the template, and you line, ideally you'd line the rest up on the dots. Oh, I haven't done the internal ones. That's what I meant to do. So it's a bit of a faff this, but we get there in the end. So I mean, getting a square edge to stay in place like this is bleeding annoying whilst drawing a line. And you hope it's going to stay 90 degrees. That's the plan. The best we can get. Okay, so there we have our marker. Now we have a center line down there, which we know we're going to go slightly to one side of. It isn't that far actually, but it's just ever so slightly to one side. Now the issue here is another way we can do this. We can either put in another bit of paper in here and draw a line onto that, or we can just aim to stick it down pretty much from that point onwards. We don't need that on there. That's going to get in the way. What else is going to get in the way? That's all going to get in the way. So you can see it's a bit of a fiddle. Okay, so most of the space is free here to put tape on. Now we are going to remove, that's better than I'd hoped actually, we will remove all of these little ferrules, but I can't route them out, so I'm going to have to route either side of them and tap them out, otherwise we're just going to get a massive, there'll be a carnage of splinters going on. So while I'm here, we can put this out of the way, get that down. Clean that off, just of any obstructions. And then we do the same thing again. We're basically going for as much grip as we can get, given the material we've got to play with. So, sorry, that. It'd help if this was sharp enough. Thank you. That. There, and we just should be all right because we're on a flat surface this time, so things should be a bit easier. And I've got a bit of let's use this for a second. I've got a bit left over here, and we'll use that as well on the other side. Here we go. whole lot. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll route down, I'll plunge route either side of those, and then we'll just lever them out, and then we'll clean up with the router. I think trying to dig them out with a lever or a screwdriver or anything is just going to create a mess. I tried pulling them out previously, but they're just not ready to come out. But they're no longer needed, as you can obviously tell, because the tremolo block is going to take over that function. Okay, so just as a sanity check, okay, we've got the locator or the registration hole in the corner where it's supposed to be. It's neatly in the corner. You know what? Actually, that technically that's no. You know something? I'm going to go back to trusting my eye. That is slightly off the corner, so I'm going to go back to my center line. Maybe I will trust it. Okay, so registration mark, we're going to say it's slightly off the corner. I'm going to trust my center line on here and on there, and I'm going to take it down to there. There we have it. That looks splendid. And there is our mark, ladies and gentlemen. Beautifully located. Hey, how's the battery doing? Still going. Cool. Right, so now we're going to go back out to the department of routing, where thankfully it's still not raining. Place you back here. Move those out of the way. Move that out of the way. We'll go this way again. It's a bit less stable this time because we've got the knobs and whatnot. I wonder if a little rubber cable saw will work. Yes, some of those knobs won't come out, so there was no chance of that. Let's have a feel. Not level exactly, but actually it's not bad. Okay, so again, this one we're going to do, there's several things we're going to do here. We're going to do we need a fence to do things at different heights. The fence. So we're going to do all of this to 18, and we want this to go to 38 from about there, ideally in a line from there onwards. And to get the router to stay in place, we're going to need to put a fence in here. Now the fence, let me get some screws first, because you can't do it without the screws. The fence takes two little screws. The screwdrivery thing, which is down there. Okay, so when it comes to it, what's going to happen is this. Let's pull that out of the way. We're going to come down to a point where we're going to need to stop the router against its flat edge, so that when it goes down it will cut only along this line. Right? It won't go further that way. So the way of doing this is to be certain, is to drop down. We don't mind any of this because we're going to get rid of it all. We're going to get down to the inside of this edge here, inside of the curve, right? And that will be the full extent of how far I want to go along. And then I'm going to call that my fence edge, right? I'm going to move that. I was going to say I'll move it out of the way, but place it first. Fence edge there. Keep the fence. Let's start again. I'll put it there, and I'll line it up so that my fence, I want it to be horizontal first of all. But I also need to be able to get the little screws in to keep it in place. So there's a good location of one side of the fence, right there. So the first thing I'm going to do is get me a screwdriver that's working. I'm going to just drill in the first screw into the fence whilst keeping it in the same place. Now this should go straight in because it's good old-fashioned ply. Now obviously I just got to be doubly careful about this because I do not want this to go anywhere near through, and I have a horrible feeling this may be a fraction too long. Right, I'm gonna get a screw that's smaller than this. I'm gonna put you on pause. Hold on. Okay, just to carry on. Yeah, there's my what do you call it, fence in place. So when it comes time, I will turn the router around like this, back it up against there, do my routing, and it shouldn't go anywhere. It's moved in the wind. Can you believe it? So that isn't where I want my fence to go. Look at that, the wind moved it. Should not have trusted that. Let's do that again. But anyway, I've got the smaller screws, that's the point. Okay. No problem. Line up the back square. We drop the router blade into this bit into the corner, and we go for our stop point on this side. Now I'm going to move that. Hopefully that will stay in the right place. Put the first one in. Okay. Over enthusiastic than I expected. Come back, thank you. Now, really, this is just a matter of lining this up square, and you can either measure it or you can do it by eye and get it done. This has got far too much torque on it. That's what I just discovered the hard way. And let's double check that. Let's double check the squareness of it. Get away from me, wasp! Oh, would you? Yikes! No, you're going to call all your friends. I know. I posted the thing the other day. Shared it. Friendship, okay? Friendship. You don't need to send out alerts. Your friends. You don't have to call all your buddies to the attack. I'm your friend. Go and eat my breakfast spoon. Oh. Right, so that's obviously no longer lined up. Right, for the purpose of this, I'm happy with that. So that goes down there, that goes there. That will be the fence I will use to route only this area here. We use the same template, right? There you go. Remove these for now. Put it to one side, put that over there as well. Get the router ready. Now we're going to go back to the original first size bit, which is here, and we're going to work from the start again. Once this is done, I'm going to go in the hammer and do this thing for a bit. Where is it? Here it is. Right. Tighten, please. Tighten. Over the top. Here we go. Again, same principle applies. This thing is going to drag down, so I'm going to start by cutting down either side of this. Let's get rid of those sits first of all. I don't like them. So here we go. We're all tied up. First of all, freehand until we get the depth necessary to pull out the ferrules and also to connect with the edge of the template, because at the moment we won't. We're too high. But we have to freehand it. Okay, ready? first bit's done. Okay, so we see that on this one we're looking for 18 plus 8, we want so number 18 plus 8, 26, we're on 15, so we're 15.3, we're 10.7 down, remaining to go. Here we're kind of getting down to where we can hopefully tap out these things, so let me just go and get some tools. Necessarily the best of all tools, but with a bit of luck that should do it. So what I want is to just basically chip these out without cracking or removing anything else unwanted. We'll get there. Whoops, I hit the old thingy there, unfortunately, ferrule. So just a matter of relatively gentle chipping away, get our way into some point of purchase on these, and then we can hopefully waggle them out. So I'm going kind of all round, a little dig all round, back to front. Don't know how well glued these in are. No, try it again. How well glued in these are. There we go, that's what we want. A bit of a wrenching force, thank you. One, two, pulling teeth, 3, 4, these have got what I was going to say, it looks like some sort of glue in there, but actually what it is it's the buffing compound from the finishing. Alright Wasp, I'm your friend, I love you. Right, so now I'm just going to go back. Actually I'll stick to the chosen height already, and I'll just clear these out now. Down to 18. Quick check. 18.5, but we're 8 off, so we've still got to do another 8 down there. We might as well carry on with all the rest of this. At this point, we have to change to the next bit in progression. It's all at the moment going well. Won't be long till we finish making its horrible noise. We're close to where we want to be. So another few mils all around, and remeasure. As I thought, we're just popping through on the inside of that cavity there, of the well. So we've got 18 plus 8 is 26, so we're 5.5 away here from our target of 18. Let's see, can we carry on with this one for a minute? Yeah, we've got a little bit more on this one. We're through here as well. We've met up, so 24.2 from 6 is 1.8, so we've got 1.8 more to go on here, and then we put the gate on and do the rest. So very little more to do on here. In fact, I can probably just do it. That is a little bit of gimp over there. It's bitten in. Where's that? I don't know. It's got some sort of in 24.7. That's 25. It's 26. That's as close as I can want to get with that. So now we put in the fence again. These screws obviously are not very deep at all, but so they probably won't hold it for very long. More than a couple of goes. We might want to replace them or change the position or something. But okay, so now we're going to very carefully use this fence to run this down here, and we're going to drop down. But whoa! But we're going to change bits at this point, and we're going to take that right down to what we hope is within 4 millimeters of the surface. And if my calculations is correct, that's going to give us a little cute little inside lip we're used to seeing on shop bought guitars. Okay, so smaller area of work, but this time we can only work in one direction, which is here. Okay, so I have to go to the edge here. Where are we? Hellfire. Go to the edge here. No, I can't really feel where we are. Let's go to the edge here. Right, there's our start point. Now we want to go down from there. So we'll go down just enough to engage the bearing, and then we'll check in with the edge here. So here we go. Taking a bit off the front of here, and it isn't a perfect straight line. That's what you get from trying to work out visually, but it's not the end of the world anyway. that it isn't. So we're going to jump to a slightly longer one now. Hopefully we'll get as far down as we can go. I'm hoping it will be all the way down. Yeah, we can go with that one from scratch. And then we might have to end up extending this one a little bit out of the barrel. But we'll carry on this line, even though, like I say, it isn't perfect. It's a little bit, what would we call it? It's a little bit short on this end, wide on that end, but it's too much trouble to reconfigure it. Okay, so we'll carry on the same process. Fire, it's just such a pain. We'll start there, drop it in there, drop it down enough to engage with the edge. Bearing on this is looks like it's given up. I don't want to use it anymore. It's got a wobble to it I don't like. It might be fixable or no, it's given, the bearing has died. Okay, put it in the pocket. So we're going to have to make do with this blue one, which is the same length hopefully, and the bearing's got quite a lot of movement in there. They're getting old, these blades, bits. Nearly there. It's just as well because it's clouding over. So I guess my hammock session. Alright, so we're about 20 mils off getting anywhere near that cute little edge I was looking for, but we shall see. Right, we're on the edge there, we're on the edge there. Let's drop it down, let's go. Okay, we can get one further extension by pulling out the bit a little bit, but I don't like that because it makes it unstable. We'll gain a couple of mils from that. That'll be it as far as we can get with that. Down to the edge, drop it down a bit and go right way round. That's it, we are done. And the reason I like this tape is because the sticky stuff comes off like that in a fabric sheet, instead of leaving tons of goo that you have to clean off at a later date with naphtha or solvents and so on. So that's that done. That's that. That's that. Holy moly, we've done it, ladies and gentlemen, and filmed it. We took the patient's teeth out along the way. Well, of course it's a bit messy and needs a good clean up, but let me go inside for a moment. gives me great outdoor pleasure. I'm going to flip this baby over. Move many metal bits out of the way. Don't worry about how many holes there are there. There's some of the original holes. Now, that's interesting. It's interesting. Why is that? Is that too narrow? Cut it to that size. I cut it to there, baby. Oh well. I thought I'd got that spot on, but you know what? It's telling me that that's not quite enough upward movement. I don't trust these templates. You know that? These are all from bought templates. They suck. Proper suck, man. I have to do a little bit of tweaking here. Oh well. I just hate that. When a bought template doesn't behave the way you expect it to. That ties up. Right, I'll go and do some double checking. But anyway, it's a fraction obstructive for my liking. That is using I'm sick of that. This is about the fourth side. I never get around to complaining about it because you know it's confused. Anyway, just, I might have to do a slight adjustment. So off for now, see you in a minute. Well, after all of that, I just had to enlarge that a tiny fraction. What I did is, despite my careful measurements, I made the route of the back passage, no, you know what I mean, the rear cavity, I made it, I started this one just a little bit too close this way, so it needed a bit more room. So it's got the room now. I put an extra mil cut in there with the router. Could have gone further, really. It doesn't really matter, but there we are. It has its movement. The only other thing about it, by the way, is yeah, it just would have been further back. So it's a couple of mils back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the remove these fellas, and I'm going to measure what it should have been and make sure I've got a recording of that, because something isn't right in the template. Just annoying, really. Thankfully it's easy to overcome. It's got on the edge of the bloody thing. Right. So what I'm concerned about is where the distance from these now, that's too close, right? So I'll go and get my, come with me. It's too close, so I'm going to measure and mark. Measure and mark. Annoying. So I made it from exactly 11, and that really, see, that's exactly what that said. So, look, 11, dead on. I did exactly what the template said. Stupid. For this bridge, oh, I could kill those. I'm sorry, this is good. I hate to say something. I'm going to not say where I got this from. I've had two templates that have been wrong from this place. Okay. So I'm dopey, really. I really am stupid. This should have always been exactly the mark I've got here, which I should have done 16 and no less, and I did. I did it either. I gave some room either side. So basically the hole should be 15, and it isn't. Wow, that's way off. That's 5 mils off. For this tremolo, there's nothing particularly unusual about this. But this needs to be, this template needs to start, this top template needs to be 5 millimeters further back than it currently is to be correct, which I find astonishing. And I've copied exactly that, which I paid 40 quid for. I've copied exactly that, and with this tremolo it doesn't work. This tremolo requires 16 from the center of the screw to the front edge, because you need from the front edge to give you all the room you need, right? That's the principle of it, and I followed that. I should have been. See, you can't tell on that, right? If you line that up there and you do that, right, you think, oh, okay, that works fine. But of course, what you're doing is you're going off the vertical there, and you're running out of room if you've got full thickness. So that is incorrect. Right, 15. I'm going to write it on here. It's got to be 15 mils from the center. Right, so center of trim screws to front of top rout equals 15 millimeters. Because if you don't, it'll still work, but you won't have enough. The start point then won't give you enough room on the rear route to raise up. So if I really wanted a full range now, I'd have to put these holes forward, but that would then send my intonation point way back down, halfway down the damn thing. So as it stands, we'll keep the same position. We've got the right intonation point, but we're limited on movement. And I think it also may be catching on the curve because it's in the wrong place. So I could probably smooth out some of this curve as well, but it's just, you shouldn't have to be doing that. That's wrong. And I copied it. I took its guidance. Oh, twice now. I'm not buying templates from that place again. I'll show you another one that's wrong from that same place, which I paid good money for, and I still didn't. Same place. And guess what? I bet the person uses the same template and the same positioning of the screws. Well, funnily enough, if that's the screw line, they're even closer. That would work even worse. That's why that's crap. So, same seller, 2 shitloads of templates. I'm really annoyed about it, actually, because I've saved it thankfully, but I'm going to have to do a tiny little bit more work to avoid this block. Now maybe if we were just working on a crappy little zinc alloy thing, that would be fine, right? But we're not. We're working on a more expensive heavy duty thing. Right, so I just put 2 in. What's good is the horizontal positioning is absolutely spot on, but I'm annoyed now. Plus the fact I skipped off and hit the bloody thing there. Doing stuff I shouldn't have had to have done. Right, so let's just tighten these up as if it was going to be starting to lift forward. Okay, so there we have our thing with a reasonable amount of movement for floating tremolo. It's going to be just enough, but that's basically, it's been arrested by the curve. We're just clouting the curve here, so I'm going to sort of I'm going to square that out a little bit, which is probably will help. But the reason it's hitting the curve is because essentially it's still slightly too close, because we're 5 millimeters out according to this stupid template. And what I don't really want to do is I don't want to kind of overdo that. I was going to say what happened to the cover on the back. There wasn't one, was there? Let's borrow one for a minute. Actually has has a purpose somewhere else, but I'll pinch it there. Testing it out here, if I can find it. Did I put it there? No, maybe I didn't. I've lost it now. Did I put it in here? It's going to be on that build, but no, it's not in there. Where did I put it? Okay, there it is. Thank you. There's a standard. Okay, so this would be in float mode, so that would be about there. So we'd be just covering the whole, you know, when you take the strings off to restring it, it would come back to there. Right. That's fine. That's fine. In fact, there's enough. Yeah, there's more than enough room. I'm just annoyed. I'm very, very annoyed. So, I mean, technically speaking, right, that's my start point. I have what room. Let's just check if I need to enlarge this even more to make it work exactly the way I want. I will do it. I'm prepared to do it. Just want to see what I've got available to me. With a bog standard cover. So annoying. Kick you in the. Why do I trust templates? Unless this is a really strange and unusual beast, this tremolo, but I don't believe it is. I mean, surely this can't just be made for cheap, crappy, nasty tremolos. Right, so that, since I've got, that's my cover line there. So I could go as, realistically, I could go as far as, just run it over the edge a little bit there. Very straight, is it? See, look, even that cover isn't straight either. If I go straight with the block for now, that'll make me feel a bit more confident. Buzzard. Let's just start with a look at that, right? So we've got, here's our extent of our cover. Let's see what we've got left. Oh, we've got an absolute ton left to use. I mean, we could haul this back another few millimeters, which would give us plenty of room. I might just do that, although I'm kind of slightly peeved off having to do it. I'd rather have the full range of movement than not enough when it comes to it. Out of interest, picking up another random tremolo unit. Let's measure the holes, front of the holes to the front of the block, because you'd expect it either to be standard or this to be something very peculiar. See, that's 15. Oh, that's just under actually. That's, so it's more like 14, 15. Okay, we're close. It's not far off, but it isn't 11, which I started with. Of course, the other thing as well with this block is that really, when you think about it, for this block to move, it has to be. This is the other thing that's wrong with this template. That's not wide enough here. This rear piece, it's not wide enough. If this was clear and had all the room to move back without encountering the curve, we'd have about 2 mils to work with. The problem is, I can either this time I can either extend a little bit that way, which I know we had enough. Well, we've got a fraction more that way. We could extend that way, and instead of going further back, we could just take the curve a bit in that direction, which should give us a little bit more room. But that's what it's doing. It's in perfect position. It's just just a fraction off. That's this isn't so much a problem. It's, you know, it's a big thick block and it may run out of room. If we were closer to the front edge, we wouldn't have that problem anyway. I've just got it now, but that's the issue. It's that distance that's caused this problem. That's annoying me. Anyway, I don't know. That's quite a big tilt. Let's. What we're looking to do. We're looking to. We want to float, aren't we? The problem with this is if that's up there like that, then we've only got that much downward bend as well. That's odd. I think we probably have to extend it a little bit. Let's have a little feel. Is this supposed to just fit easily into here, or am I just making things difficult? Right, thank you. Okay, so if I were using this thing, I'd run out here. Now actually I want, even though I only want it sitting at a certain height, I want more downward movement than that. So, thank you. So, I think we have to do the undoable, think the unthinkable think, dream the undreamable dream, and enlarge it slightly. What did we reckon we had? We had tons of room. Just tons of room. Equals tons of room. So we're stuck with that where it is. That's not the point anyway. The front doesn't collide. It's the back. That's the problem. Hold on. Could have done without doing more. That's just vexatious. So knowing 16 as I now do, I will start with 16 next time as the gap to the front, and I would align. Yeah, that would be the front of, or I would position it knowing that the block starts at 16 away from the centre of the holes, and not 11 as measured on that template. Because that, where you position that front one dictates where the second one, where the back one goes. I was a fraction out that ways with the registration hole, because I did it after the fact, but it wasn't so bad that it makes any difference to the reach of the tremolo in terms of its downward use. So yeah, just slightly cheesed off, I think it's fair to say. So I'm probably not going to bore you with this next bit, but I'm just going to enlarge this a fraction more to give us as much room as we need. We could probably draw it out on paper up there and measure it exactly, depending on how far we want it to go, but it's probably just easier to route some more space and leave it at that, so as long as there's enough to use in both directions. Yeah, that's infuriating really, I have to say. Right, starting off with a square edge down here. There you go. So this will push the corner back a little bit as well. We'll be within the amount. Right, hold on. I won't bore you. See you later.